Yeah, we're live. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Ricci-Jane Adams, and this is Dr. Renee Mayne. I'm not sure if that's a technical qualification, but for today, we're just calling her that. Dr. Renee Mayne. It's honorary title, an honorary doctorate bestowed upon you, my darling. And we are here in a slightly different way on the Hedonistic Way at Midday show. I'm in charge. Renee is being interviewed. And I believe this has come out of the desire of your audience to get to know you better. And I really love this. I've done this with Midday Southie before and on her podcast interviewed her. And I really love that opportunity. I think it's a brilliant thing for you to offer to your audience, especially it's different to even just going live solo because you kind of can't interview yourself.
Exactly.
So this is an opportunity for us to get to know you. Now, I took no polls. I didn't ask anyone what they wanted to know. This is entirely based on what does Ricky want to know about Renee? And hopefully that will be interesting to other people as well. I'm sure it will be. I'm not sure if we're checking Facebook though, so if people do have questions, I can always check on my phone if you want. Then feel free to drop your questions in the comments and if I remember, I'm sometimes not great at that, but if I remember, I'll have a look, and then if not, we'll have to come back for part 2, right? And we'll answer everybody else's questions.
That's right, we can do that.
All right. So how are you doing today, first up, my darling? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good.
Okay.
Really good. Yeah, I just feeling into this. You know what? Like I'm in a place where I trust my own soul, and I'm feeling really at peace. Yeah.
It's a pretty big time for you. You've just graduated as a qualified, clinically trained intuitive guide with the Institute for Intuitive Intelligence. Well done.
Thank you.
You celebrated or anticipated that celebration by shaving your head.
Yes.
And I want to ask about that. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And you look glorious, by the way. You know, not everybody can rock that. You're also, as am I, we're only a few suburbs, 10 or 20 suburbs away from each other in Melbourne in our second round of stage 3 lockdowns with a much higher number of cases of COVID. And so we're both sort of living in an extraordinary time, as is the entire globe, but it's quite interesting to sort of be thrust into this time. So I'm going to ask you questions about a number of the things that I've just mentioned, but I want to begin with this one, my darling, because I think this is one of my favorite questions to ask anybody, and it's sort of the umbrella for where we're going to go.
Cool.
Renee Mayne, what do you stand for?
You know, the first thing that comes to mind is I don't even know whether it's what I stand for, but what's alive in me right now is for people to remember who they were before they become a byproduct of their life experiences or what's going on in the world around them. Like, who are they then?
Yeah.
And that is what I stand for. Just being on that quest that's not a pursuit, for them to have that remembrance.
Okay, I think your earring might just be banging against your mic, baby, so maybe just take one of them out. You can rock it with a uni earring. I think that'll be better for your sound quality.
I'll do both. There we go.
I love the one earring. So the way I understand, and I want you to tell me if that's right, the way that you are speaking, that you do that really through an intersection of both intuition and sexuality and a reclamation of the undomesticated self at those intersections. Is that an accurate kind of summary, or is there other aspects to how you bring people into that space?
Yeah, it's that, but there's also a really big portion of it for me is there's 4 elements that we go into with the hedonistic way, and that's self, spirit, sex, and service. So it's the cross-pollination of those 4 things. But in that, we dance with the mutable laws that takes us into a place where we begin to really embody what it's like to see them dissolve. within us first. So it's really an embodiment and an integration, as well as that intuition and sexuality. It's that and more.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. I love those 4 S's. And of course, you know, for me, the understanding of intuition is it's always about service, which I know is not implied in everybody's understanding of it. But I think those 4 S's are amazing. And there's so much I want to touch on. The first thing I want to do, though, is let's not talk about the laws in a way that assumes everybody knows what the hell we're talking about. Yeah. What are the cosmic mutable laws?
So there's several. But the ones that I perceive as we're seeing this unfurling and seeing them dismantle and dissolve right now is the law of truth, the law of gender, and the law of polarization.
Yeah. Amazing. So, you know, just to give a little background, you know, as many of you know, my kind of work is around the 3 immutable laws, and your work is around the mutable laws. And what we know to be true about these, you know, these ancient cosmic truths from Hermes is that the mutable laws will end. There will come a point where that happens. So right now, your feeling is from your work in the world that these mutable laws, specifically around truth, gender, and polarity, are coming to an end. What is the mutable law of truth about? Because how does truth end?
Well, it's always changing and it's always evolving. So, and it's that, but it's also as well, like the law of truth for me is just about being able to hold your own soul without being persuaded and be wavering in everything else that's going on around us, you know, especially in a time where there's so much of, you know, everything. There's angst, there's anger, there's resentment, there's blame, there's victimhood. There's so much going on right now. But to be in a position where you can stand solid and unwavering in that. And there's also, you know, last week in the first temple to the internship, we spoke about the law of truth. And it was, you know, and I said to them, as soon as you defend your truth, it's no longer your truth. So, you know, are you willing to let that go?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a really powerful way that we can really embody and, you know, and walk our talk in this work.
Yeah, I love that. That one of the teachings of Course in Miracles, of course, is be defenseless.
Yeah.
As soon as you go into defensiveness, I love that, the idea that you are no longer aligned with truth, because if truth is truth, it's solid. It's not something you just kind of go, okay, that's curious, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
There's so many things I want to back the truck up on here. The internship.
Yeah.
What is this? Tell me more.
Well, it is, I want to say it's my baby that has just been birthed. So upon finishing the 3rd level, so it's really a fusion of, you know, of the work of the intuitive guide, and I've fused that with the hedonistic way. So it's a series of 10 temples that we journey through, and it's really about embodiment and expansion, and people, you know, really I think, what do I want to say, like stepping into, but it's like it's being revealed to them for many cases in the first way is their own eros, and then from that place is creating from that space. So I don't know.
But I mean, you wasted no time. I love that. It's like, when did you graduate? Like, I think you were announced yesterday as a graduate. So I'm so excited that this is this bringing together of all that you were prior to your training with the Institute, which was vast, and now bringing it into this container, which is incredibly exciting. So you're guiding your interns into that journey through a series of teachings and experiences to embody these laws. So truth is one. The law or the immutable law of gender, then, what is this one about?
So that is, especially in spirituality, we hear the words feminine and masculine thrown around and spoke about a lot. And this was a law that that it was one that I was like, how can this ever change? Like, gender is gender, like I didn't get it. And then I started to see, like, people, there's more gender fluid and non-binary people than ever before. And we're seeing it, and I just get like, as what does Gemma say, goose bubbles or whatever it is, truth bubbles all over me, because I find it so exciting that we're melting into a new way of being, where we're seeing beyond masculine and feminine and really embodying sacred union and what that is. Because when we melt into that, and I see it as when the sperm meets the egg, it's a gentle penetration. It's this smooth transition that just happens, and it's all encompassing. So when we move beyond that, we can actually be in a place where we are the beloved, where we are of the one mind, and we can go about. It's the difference between knowing that we're of the one mind. We know that, we cognitively know that, so many of us, but what is it like to speak as the one mind? Or to be, or to show up and to serve of the one mind? So that is the unfolding that I find really, really exciting.
Yeah, it is. And as you say, gender as a biological imperative may not necessarily be going anywhere, although who knows, might. But gender as an identity, as in, you get to treat me this way because you know that I have a vagina or a vulva, versus you treat me that way because I have a penis, which is the end of patriarchy, right? But it's not the replacement of one model, gendered model, with another. It's actually that
and it's not about, like, we see a lot about, I want to crush the patriarchy and I want to do this and I want to bring them down. And the thing is like, and it's, it's from A Course in Miracles, and I'll probably butcher it, but it's, it's when we're all encompassing of all things. What is that quote? I've totally forgotten it. You'll know it. What is it?
So far, I don't know it, but maybe it'll pop into your head. But
yes, it will pop into my head. When we are all encompassing of all things, we have no opposites. So, it's that. So it's not about bringing anyone down. It's not about bringing anyone down or shattering anyone or anything else. It's just welcoming it all in. And that is from a place of absolute peace and trust. And that is that deep, that pure soul emergence that we see unfolding.
The defenselessness, as you say, the law of polarity. So it makes perfect sense that anything that has an opposite will have to be resolved in this age. And that is, at the level of consciousness or of the level of energy. So the law of polarity, sorry, it was the law of truth before. The law of polarity, obviously this sort of is going to be much of what we're talking about, but how else is it defined?
So it's defined, and I mean, there's a lot of people, so some people might see it as non-dualism, but I'm kind of leaning in that it's neo-dualism, non-dualism. So it's, or neo-dualism. So it's that kind of place in between, because as long as we have a conscious, consciousness, subconscious, unconsciousness, that's duality right there. Like, so to be a pure non-dualist, will only come about when we're pure wave and pure energy. And we're a long way off that.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, it's about, for me, and what I teach my interns is it's about letting that dissolve, letting the idea of what we think is pleasure and pain and good and bad and all these seemingly opposite things, to actually just surrendering into the moment and welcoming it all in, and and sitting in the fire with all of it and taking that evolution and moving with it and trusting that, like just trusting that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I very randomly just this morning was listening to a woman called Teal Swan, who some of your listeners may be aware of. She's a fairly well-known, I guess, spiritual teacher, but she was talking about her predictions for 2020, and it was recorded on January 1st. So of course I had to have a wee listen, because I'm like, okay, how good is she? And even though she doesn't cite a particular, pandemic, what she is talking about is the absolute, it's the year of redefining self. So absolutely letting go of anything that is opposite, and that resolution of that. And it's very much what you're speaking about in regards to these laws, is that this year is an accelerated opportunity for us to redefine ourselves. And I shared something yesterday. It was like, if we're not working with the energy of this pandemic to let it change us, what is the point? So as you say, it's not that we're supposed to have reached a state of pure non-dualism whilst we're in Earth School, because that's enlightenment and we might as well go home. It's we're learning to be in a state of defenselessness in front of the opportunity to be constantly in doubt and uncertainty, like to sit in the, okay, I don't know. And who am I now? I don't know. So I love that. So what an incredible journey for your interns. But there's another thing that you offer that I haven't been able to attend, but I'm very curious to know more about. So one of the other ways that you're trained is as a dominatrix, and that's a training that you've done, which I just love, because of course it's so far outside of my scope of understanding. I'm like, okay, take me into the mind. But one of the ways that you work with that is the rise of the intuitive dominatrix. And I'm very curious to ask, what is that intersection? Because that's obviously intuition and sexuality, but in a very particular way. And I'd love for you to kind of talk us through that a little bit more. So, and apologies for everyone who's done the training, and I should have, and then I probably wouldn't have to ask dumb questions, but I'm going to ask, because not everyone, surely.
No, not everyone. So that's a really good question. So for me, one of the things that when I was doing the training to become a dominatrix, I realized that benevolence is absolutely crucial in that, and knowing that it's not about before, I'll even back up there a little bit, is the most important facet and element to any sort of play is trust. Is trust and absolute surrender. So as a dominatrix, it's really important that we surrender everything that we think we know and allow ourselves to step up into this energy and into this entity of absolute benevolence. So when and for me personally, when I'm doing this and when I'm playing with this, it can look differently. So sometimes it might be really playful, and you might be in your maiden energy, or sometimes you might be in your wild woman, or in your whore, or in your wife, or in terms of an archetype. So what I realized with this work is she's all things. She's all the archetypes, but a good dominatrix will honor what's present and alive in that energy and be able to work with whatever's happening around her, both within her and her lover.
So we're looking very much in alignment with the work of an intuitive guide. Yes.
Yeah.
So you know, like one of the things we say is you take no intake data when you have your first session with a client, because if you know anything in advance, you'll make an assumption about that person.
That's right.
So as you're speaking, I'm like, you could be describing the work of an intuitive guide. She's maybe not going to be in her hall, but she will certainly be inhabiting, you know, in the same way. She has to be fully present to the energy available, and it will be different. Her role will be different for every person she serves.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That's incredible. So I guess I almost want to go back a little bit in time and sort of absolutely ask, where did this journey begin for you? Because, and I don't mean the journey of a dominatrix or the journey of a spiritual being, but really, like, when did you begin to become aware that the way you make meaning of the world is different to everybody around you? Because that's really what I get so strongly with you, is that you are interpreting the world through a completely different lens. Yeah. And that's your superpower. But how did you become aware that you were? Like, when did that happen?
And I'm just going to go back, and gosh, it feels like it's going back. But the first thing that popped into my head then was I was 17 and I'd moved to Alice Springs, and it was my first, like, I lived with my sister, but my sister wasn't, like, she was not I was 17, so she would have been 20. Yeah. So, you know, we're both really still kids. But I'd feel like I'd left an abusive family home. Yeah. So I was running, and I was working 3 jobs, and I was just, you know, doing my thing and earning money for the first time, and I was saving and, you know, just experiencing the world. And I remember one night I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was really shit at school. Like, you know, RJ, like, you're an amazing student, like, you're academic, like, you know, you're a god. And I'm not that person. Like, in school, I was shit. I was terrible. I wanted to learn. I had a deep yearning to learn. Yeah. But my experience on the outside and my everyday life, I felt like really stopped me from living that life. Okay. Stopped me from being that student.
So maybe you weren't shit. Maybe the systems didn't work for you, and the content of what they wanted you to learn was never going to float your boat.
Yes. And you know, and also my home life. Yeah. I would wake up in the middle of the night with textbooks over my chest from what I'd fallen asleep, because, you know, I had things I had to do, you know, and it was you know, especially during those later high school years, it was rocky, you know, and it was really hard. And I was doing the best I could just to stay afloat. Yeah. But back to Alice Springs, in our little 2-bedroom flat, with my sister, I woke up and I wrote the words, and I would never have recognized myself as a writer, but it was the first thing that come to my mind. And I just woke up, grabbed a pen and paper, and it was, an image is to protect, be yourself and be it well. It's for the young and for the old. It's the image you uphold, you yourself have to mold.
Mm. Wow, I love that you remember that. Like, it's committed to memory.
It is committed to memory, because I just remember writing it, and I just remember looking at it, and I had that feeling of like, did I write that? Like, did I actually really write that? And I'm looking at it. And so for me, what in that moment, what I saw was image and perception and self, and I seen them as separate things. Yeah. And I seen them as a journey that I had to create, that no matter what was happening around me, I had to be solid enough in who I am to make good choices for myself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the first realization.
Yeah. And what a crucial time, because, that young kind of precipice of womanhood going into probably one of the roughest places in Australia, and really, having, as you said, being on the run from what you've left behind, and also having felt that, whether you felt failure at not being able to participate in your education system, all of the complexities of that pivotal moment of you could have made a different decision about who you were.
Yeah.
And instead that download
Yeah.
of pure wisdom just arriving into you. Were you able to understand it at the time?
I think I understood it enough to allow me the experiences that were about to unravel.
Okay.
So, and sometimes we make choices that at the time you go, why would I wish this on myself? I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, yet why have I made these choices? So I seen a life that after that unraveled for myself. But now it's like, okay, I know it. So I think it's something that it's a piece of writing that I meet, in the spiral of consciousness at different levels all the time. And it's one that, I think I continually meet still to this day.
Well, yes, and it's kind of, it's exactly the essence of your work, really. If you were to use that as a way to describe the way you serve, to me, that sounds like a perfect statement of truth, of how you serve those. I keep going to say women, but I don't think it is just women that you serve. I don't, or is that
predominantly at the moment? It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's just it's always.
Yeah.
I love hearing about that. The you before I knew you, because of course you sort of arrived fully formed in my life, and you've had many iterations. I mean, how many lives do you think Renee Mayne's had? How many versions of Renee Mayne have there been?
Oh, just infinite. Like it, if you go back on our photo albums, it's like every photo I have a different hair color, I have a different hairstyle, I have all this, and I've been with my partner for 21 years and he's had like the same haircut, like he looks the exact same. And I'm next to him all the time just rocking this different thing. So it's really funny, because I've had so many. So
I'd
many.
like to ask you a little bit about your relationship, if you're happy for me to do that, because I know that I've only met your, you're not married, are you?
No.
I mean, technically, legally, whatever you are, spiritually, however you choose to language it, but only very briefly at the jam that we, attended back in the day when we were allowed out of the house. But there's a solidness about him, and there's this kind of like anchor energy, and I don't want to impose that perception on your relationship of what role he might play for you, but I would love to know what part he's played in that evolution, because to be with someone who can let you not just change your haircut, but obviously go through your iterations, I mean, that's an extraordinary quality, and I would love to ask how it works. What's the dynamic between you two?
It's in the beginning, it was one of real, he made me feel safe and seen, and it was just this, like I say all the time, like, we've traveled multiple lifetimes together, because I felt like I knew him before I met him. So it was just this soul remembrance as soon as we met. And we were only together for 8 months, I think, before I went to work on cruise liners. So I think from the very beginning of our relationship, we had to learn really quickly that in order for this to work, if this was going to work, I had to be free, and I had to feel free. That was really important for me, coming from such a violent background and such an abusive past. And for Chris, like, he's a rock. He'll say it all the time. He's like, I'm a simple man. I like my meat and 3 veg. Like, that's his thing. So he is that rock, and he is that anchor for us. But we've had to be fluid in it, and and for us to be, to walk this path together, it's important that he honors his path and his path of service and how he shows up, and everything that his soul is craving, and then I'm doing the same thing, and just trusting that, hey, we'll be together on this path. So a lot of it is, and there's been times where that was really fucking hard. He's like, this is too much, Renee, like too much, like, and he had to evolve. Like, he evolves at like snail's pace, and I'm like lightning speed. So to find that equilibrium in our relationship was really huge. But it was probably for him a surrendering of control.
So give me an example of what has been too much for him, and because I know it may not be the thing that would be the most shocking necessarily, but what's felt like you're pushing me too hard.
You know what it was? The first thing that came to mind, RJ, then was, are you ever going to be content? That was like,
that's for a spiritual woman, isn't it?
Yeah, that was his biggest fear. For me and for our relationship. And what does that look like?
And what does it actually mean? Like, what was he actually asking of you? What is contentment, do you think? What do you think he was defining that as?
I think my endless pursuit. It was, nothing was ever enough. And it was that at the underbelly, because ever since I realized that, and I think we've spoken about it perhaps before, but ever since that quest stopped within myself, where I'm enough, and this vessel and my soul, and just that surrendering of trust, and that craving and that yearning that we're constantly wanting more, seeking more, doing more, trying to be more, have more, act more, work more, whatever. And it's constantly more. And a lot of people say, we just need to lean in and we just need to do it. But how about we just lean back? How about we lean back? How about we just go, okay, like, let myself be content now. Let myself trust. So it was that really saw the shift in that. So I don't think he was fully conscious of what that content was, but I noticed that as soon as that endless, tireless, well, actually it's a freaking exhausting pursuit, that one, right? It's exhausting. As soon as the pursuit ended, that fear was put to bed, because all of a sudden I become really at peace with being, fully human.
Okay, so when did that pursuit end? Because I'm sure there's many of us who are listening going, okay, well, how did you find contentment then? If that's the way let's say that may not be how you define it, but there's resonance in that word for me. I get it, that it's okay to still be a seeker, but a seeker without contentment is actually her own enemy. She's a caged animal. What is it that shifted for you?
It's the fuel of where it comes from. Like that, and I wrote a poem today for my interns tomorrow night. I can't wait to read it. So I don't want to give it away now.
Afterwards, or is this just like, premium content? You don't get this poem unless you're an intern.
Well, I'll probably share it afterwards, but yeah.
First.
Yes, yeah. So, but I speak about the embers, so that where does the embers of that fire, where does that come from?
Yeah.
Like, is that seeking from I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not educated enough, that pursuit, or is that pursuit a quest of truth, of just, of making love to the moment?
Yeah.
Is that just that yearning that, that comes alive in you right now, like that unfolding?
Yeah.
For me, that's the difference.
But tell us when, how, when, get specific, baby. I want to hear. And obviously the journey, I get that. But the moment, then there's always that kind of pivotal turning point where you're like, okay, even if I lose it for a while, I get it, what it is now.
Yeah. It was this moment when, and I just feel my heart right now, like, just like, whoa. It's this moment where I just finished delivering Mum's eulogy, and I was walking back, and I had to walk past, it was the coffin in the ground, and and she was there, and it was that anchor point of just like, Mum, it wasn't for nothing, like, and that codependency that we had in this journey, no more, like, no more. Like, when you're at rest, you are free, woman, you are fucking free, and I'm free.
Yeah.
And that was the moment, because it was just the attachment, like the attachment to each other, to things, to people, to outcomes, to experiences, to success, to, like, I want it so fucking bad. It never ever lives up to the expectations that I have in my head.
Yeah.
And that day I just let it all rest. Let it all rest. I buried it with her.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge. And it's I mean, it's huge. I just want to sort of sit with that, because there's so much that could have, with a different lens, again, you looking at it, it could have been the guilt and the shame and the I never resolved it, and now you're gone, and we cut blah blah blah. But you could see the pure potential, even in the grief of loss, of choosing to surrender all of that which had come from the things you sort of mentioned in passing, and the experiences that could have defined you in such a different way. But to take that, as you say, use that as the fuel for transformation, rather than the fire that's going to burn you down to the ground with no recovery. That's remarkable. Yeah. It's really interesting, because I have an amazingly complex relationship with my mother, as so many of us do, and she is still with us, God bless her, thank goodness, and a teacher in the institute. But I remember a night where I heard her breathing as she was sleeping in the room next to me, and having that sense of, that what would it take for us to redefine our relationship, and how could it happen while we were both alive? And as she was breathing in and out, just feeling that sense of, what if she stopped breathing? And that's it wasn't a morbid thought. It was literally like, what freedom there would be. And I, in a way, I had to take that, because God bless, I hope her life is still going to continue, that to kind of do the same thing, but to try and do it in the embodied way. And I just the huge courage. I mean, neither path is easy, but I'm so moved by what you're sharing of how you were able to take that, the embers of that, to fuel that transformation. I think what you've hit on is so profound, because, you know, for me, it's this question, what if there is no problem? Because that was the way I tortured myself into believing it was never enough and never feeling that satisfaction and constantly out of contentment. And I'm not sure I figured out contentment. I don't know if I figured that out. But there isn't that agitation that is causing trouble, rather than the agitation that's causing awakening. I'm trying to be brief in my response, because I want to keep to hear you talk, but I'm really excited by what you're sharing. And I don't think there is a quick fix either, is there? It's like you couldn't go, oh, well, if I just could have cut straight to that moment. It's all part of it. So now you're at this place where you are serving in a way that is clearly lighting you up, because you are smiling like a giddy teenager in love every time you mention the internship. What are you going to do to ensure you prevent that pattern that you've mentioned briefly before of like, okay, it was never enough, it could never meet your expectations in your mind? How do you ward against that?
You know, I really want to honor you in this moment, RJ, because you taught me the biggest gift for me. And it might sound really frivolous and stupid and easy, but for me it wasn't, and it hasn't been. And that is the gift of humility. You know, I've worn that as a badge of honor for so many years, and, you know, stood up and spoke about humility. And now I just kind of laugh, because I've just sunk into just this, it's quiet, it's really quiet. And it's that, you know, and that quote by Marianne Williamson in Return to Love is, you know, it's being on your knees and staying on your knees. That is my biggest reset point that I come back to so many times a day. For me, that's the peace. That's the peace of being in absolute surrender and humility. That for me is the pillar to all greatness. All greatness. And for us to be of service, and that so often we get in our own way. And, you know, when during the third level, and that moment where I realized that, if I'm in my own way, I can't serve. I can't go deep. And my thing is, I want to go deep. I want to fucking go deep, and I want to be unforgettable, you know, and I want to be so fucking great that they remember me forever when I serve. And for me, for that to happen, I need to trust. You know, you taught me to trust my intuition, to trust myself. But to do that and to go there, I have to also be on my knees and stay on my knees and be in absolute humility and not get power drunk on my gifts, because they're not mine. My gifts do not belong to me. I'm just someone who is lucky enough to do this work. And you taught me that.
Well, I am very, very grateful to have such remarkable students who are so willing to embody that. But you spoke about it at the beginning. Humility is defenselessness. It's exactly the same thing. And I love that it's what you can pass on, because it isn't, you know, so often I think what you were describing before is that humility is trying to defend ourselves against humiliation, which is if you know, there's this constant threat of, I will be humiliated, so I'm going to out myself before you do. And it's actually not humility. It's actually this terror of being found out for being a bad person, or we're flawed. Whereas humility is that recognition that I am God. The most humble thought we can possess is I am God. And it's such a contrast to what we think humility is. But that with that thought comes the absolute truth. Well, if I'm God, then whatever you accuse me of, so be it.
Yeah.
Yes, I am that. So be it, sure. And, you know, probably you and I together have been accused of being everything under the sun. And it is the truth, you know, with, you know, my formula, humility, grace, power, to reach true power, divine power, you have to be unafraid that as you rise in your power and your leadership, the more that is going to be thrown at you.
Yeah.
It isn't an antidote to being accused of things. It's actually the magnet.
Yes. Yeah.
So why do it? Well, you do it because that is what God wants for you. It's not a choice. So I love everything that you're sharing. And I love that I've played some small part in that, but it really was your willingness. And you know, that, as you say, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it all the way, baby. And that's what I love about you. I haven't checked to see if there's any questions. Do you want me to, or are you happy for me to just keep letting me ask the question?
You can ask away. I can quickly.
You know, I'm loving the questions I'm asking in all humility. I think we're doing great work together. I'm loving the answers I'm getting. You know, I do want to go back to this idea a little bit because, you know, two of the most amazing women that I know, you and Amy Tal of Temple of She, are both really, really proponents of our sexuality as a gateway to our divine nature.
Yeah.
And I would just love to go back a little bit to the way this shows up in your work, because sex is one of your 4 S's. So it's obviously important and it's present. You know, what is it that you want people to know about sexuality and sex in terms of the work that you do?
I feel like I sit in this, you know, in this quiet space with sexuality, and it's really about it's that it's minding your own pleasure, and it's learning how to dissolve the identity of what sexy is to what, as a woman, what femininity is, who am I in that, like that blood that runs through my veins, like what is that quiet knowing, like what is that deep soul emergence from that space. And for me, sexuality it's about having a conversation with the deepest part of your womb, and the entry point of, you know, of your cervix, like communing with that and that potency, and learning how to connect to that creation, and seeing it as a cauldron. And what are we putting in? What are we putting into the cauldron, and what is the cauldron trying to tell us? It's seeing that as the divine. And so many of us, when I talk about sexuality, it's really about learning how to receive, and in giving we receive, but also opening ourselves up to allow pleasure in, and what hedonism is, because so many of us shut down and we're so disconnected. And especially in spirituality, it's what I call very upper chakra, and not embracing our lower chakras and all the juice and gold. That was a combination of gold and juice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just being and sitting in that. Sex was always something that was an exchange, you know, and it was like a bartering tool to allure men in, and, you know, for a short-term gain of feeling loved or acceptance or seen or a boost of confidence. But that the allure that comes from self within your sexuality, for me, is the gateway to living life wide awake. And for me, if someone tells me what their sex life is and what it looks like, I can tell them exactly what is going on within all of who they are. I know exactly what they're yearning for. I see the truth in that.
Yes, you do. You've done it to me. and in such subtle ways. And I'm like, you can see right inside of me. I know exactly what's going on. Yeah,
I can.
It's a really remarkable, I really, really want to honor that, because I think there is a deep intuitive wisdom in your understanding of everything that you've described. But you know, it's like the oracle cards. It's like just all you need is a little insight into someone's sex life and you can see inside their soul.
Yeah.
We've only got a few minutes left, and I want to completely change tack, if that's all right, because we are in an extraordinary time right now.
Yeah.
Life is always extraordinary. I get that. But I know there are a lot of people in the world who are looking for some kind of succor, some kind of counsel. What is this all about, and how are we supposed to work with this energy of this pandemic, Renee? Like, I'm not asking you as though you've got all the answers, but what are you saying to your children? What are you saying to the people around you who would seek out your wisdom? What are we supposed to do with this, and how do we work with it?
I just have this deep trust. Like I was saying to Chris yesterday, that, you know, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. There's a lot of, you know, do we wear masks? Do we not wear masks? Like, burn the fucking masks, you know, don't be controlled. There's a lot of victim. There's a lot of blame. There's a lot, so much, so angry. And I'm all for holy rage. Like, all for holy rage. This is not holy rage.
Yeah.
This is not holy rage. This is not your soul responding.
Yeah.
That's reactive and it's retaliation. And as long as we're in that space of, is there a conspiracy theory, they're trying to control us, we know where this is going, it's going to be reactive, and you're fighting, and no peace, no solution can come of that. It has to come from a place of, I've got this from the back lines and I can see, but more importantly is, I trust God. I trust the beloved. Like, I have to trust beyond any politician, any person, any law, anything. I fucking trust God.
Yeah.
And I'm completely at peace and completely unafraid as to what that looks like.
Yeah.
And the cycle of evolution, we've done this before. It's worn a different mask and it's had a different identity. It's gonna happen, and we are fighting against the natural cause of evolution. This is evolution, and it's gonna have to have its natural cause.
Yeah.
It's gonna have to do its thing.
Yeah.
And we cannot control that. We cannot control that.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with it. I feel peace.
Five words. And yeah, I just love everything that you're saying, because there is, conspiracy theories are an attempt to try to control the unknown. And, God bless them all. If it wouldn't make any difference, even if we knew what the truth was, because there isn't.
Exactly.
So I want to ask you then, as a final question, wise guru teacher, Dr. Renee, what is it that you want to leave us with? If there's anything that you want us, your audience, those who love you, those who are learning about you for the first time, and everybody in between, what is it that you want us to know right now?
I want to say, like, deep within your soul, like you really know, and just let that come out. Like let that come out, let that emerge, and just recognize and see it crumble. Just the identity, the shame, the shadow. Like, enlightenment doesn't look a certain way, and how that is totally different. How that is for you and how that is for me is totally different. So no matter what enlightenment or spirituality or sexuality or self or service, it looks differently to you. So let the shame melt away. Like, let it go. It's not serving us. We carry so much shame about what we think things should look like and how we should show up and serve. But the energy that stores in our body is fucking toxic. And we really need to face that shame that so many of us are carrying right now, that a lot of us are completely unconscious to. And now is a brilliant time to face ourselves and let that soul emerge as its pure soul self, and don't try to control it. Let evolution take its course, and trust yourself.
Yeah. Oh, we could do another hour quite easily. We can always come back and look at questions that I forgot to look at then. But thank you, my darling. I feel really honored to, I know I bullied my way into being, well, I didn't bully. I just that's it. My job. I'm interviewing you. Well, there'd be hundreds of others who would have done an equally, if not better job. But I really did have some questions that I've just, in the busyness of life, or, the different ways that we're interacting, I've never been able to ask. And I'm really grateful that I've had my questions answered. And of course, that's just opened up lots more. But obviously, your internship is something that will come around again. So for those people who are interested to learn more, I'm sure you'll keep sharing there. And of course, nearly every Monday, sometimes at midday, maybe next week at 11 a.m, we can hear you interview others, and of course, gain wisdom from them, but also from you through those processes as well. So you're around, baby. Let's just keep listening to you.
I am. Thank you, beautiful. Thank you for hijacking my show. It's been so much fun.
It has been. I listened to our interview that you did a little while ago, and just really reflected on how deep our conversations go. So I knew we'd have a good one here, and I've just loved it. I hope everyone else has. It's been great for me. That's what matters, right?
Thank you so much, beautiful.
Thank you. I'll let you do the final bit, because I can't end this because you're in control.
I will. Thank you, everybody, so much. We'll see you next week.